Have the Red Sox finally woken up and realized that they should, I don't know, act like a big market team? Could this be a year they get back into it? Let's bring in Gabby from Locked On Red Sox to figure it out.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to a Locked On MLB, Locked On Red Sox crossover. This is the podcast we talk about all of Major League Baseball or the 2025 World Series champion Boston Red Sox all year long. I'm the host of Locked On MLB. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan, but hey, I'm not going this on. It is indeed a crossover. Let's welcome aboard Gabby, formerly Hurlbut, now Gabby Maljanian of Locked On Red Sox. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's definitely taking some getting used to with the new last name, trying to acclimate the listeners to the new one. So that's been a bit of a process, but definitely happy to be here.
Well, hey, follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it now, and on the Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. At Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. About once every time the Red Sox make it to the ALCS, I appear on something called Blue Sky at Sully Baseball. But the best way to get a hold of us is just put your comments right here on the YouTube. Where can they follow Locked On Red Sox? Gabby.
Yes, you can follow Locked On Red Sox on Twitter at LO_Red Sox, or you can follow my personal account at Gabby Maljanian on Twitter or on Instagram at Gabby_Maljanian10. And you can also subscribe to Locked On Red Sox wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube as well.
All right, now I just want to just throw one thing, and this is the first time you've been on the show since you got married.
Yes.
You and I have something in common, other than the fact that we're both native New Englanders. Actually, you're a native New Englander, right?
Yes, of
Okay,
course.
good. As am I. We were both married in October, but you were smart enough to get married in October where the Red Sox weren't in the playoffs.
Yes.
Uh, I was getting married in the Bay Area while the Red Sox and A's were playing a postseason game.
Oh, wow.
Um, and on the day I got married, Trot Nixon hit a walk-off home run in the division series. And everyone knew I was sneaking into the bar area of the reception to catch the game. And my wife kept saying, "When are we gonna have to dance?" So, well, the Red Sox game is over. And of course it went into extra innings. And I there was even money. You could have gone to FanDuel and bet that we weren't going to make it through the night. But when Trot Nixon hit the walk-off home run, then everything was okay. But good call on picking a year where they weren't contenders.
Hey, I definitely planned that pretty well, I'd say, because if the Red Sox were in the playoffs, that would be the priority.
Of course it would. Of course it would. I always think about you're way too young to remember this, but in 1987, Frank Viola was a big star for the Minnesota Twins, and he was going to be the best man at his brother's wedding. However, his brother's wedding landed on what was game one of the World Series. And I don't think anybody thought Minnesota was going to be playing in that year's World Series. And lo and behold, Frank Viola was starting on. So there you go. But he did hold up a little sign saying congratulations, whatever his brother's name is.
Wow.
There you go. All right, that's enough of the past. Let's talk about the pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting really soon. And before we do a real deep dive on what look at, I try to be objective on the show, but I can't pretend. Look, I got the freaking 1982 Red Sox yearbook and a Jim Rice cover right behind me. I can't pretend I'm not a native New Englander who's appeared on HBO talking about the Red Sox. The American League East is really weird going into this year because you can make a case for all five teams. I think the Yankees are the defending champs, which they are. They did lose Juan Soto. They did improve their defense, but there's no great team in that division, nor is there a lousy team in that division. Like even last year was 94 wins was first place, 74 wins was last place. It's not like there's a 100 loss team or a 100 win team in that division. Putting the Red Sox aside, what are your thoughts on the other teams in the AL East going into 2025?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because it does feel like it's wide open going into this year. There's definitely no clear-cut favorite that I'm looking at and saying that team will definitely win the division. If the Yankees had retained Juan Soto, I would definitely say them because their pitching has improved and their starting rotation, if healthy, is going to be really tough. So that's something that I'm looking at with the Yankees. But on the flip side of that, I'm worried about the offensive productivity for them now that they have lost Juan Soto. So it kind of opens the door for other teams in that division to make a splash, with the Red Sox being one of those teams. And I'm looking at all five of these teams right now, and there's definitely aspects of each one that could help them to win the division. So it's almost a matter of who's going to be the healthiest. And
Yeah.
that to me is the biggest factor in which team to me is going to win this division this year.
I mean, Juan taking that Jenga piece of Juan Soto out of the Yankees lineup is no small thing. I mean, he had a fantastic year last year, and the year before, remember, you had Judge, who was healthy until he crashed into the right field fence at Dodger Stadium. You had Garrett Cole winning the Cy Young Award that year, and they missed the playoffs, and they almost finished 500. And a lot of things went right last year. Judge was healthy, Soto was healthy. You Anthony Volpe was healthy and played the full season, and their pitching was pretty good last year. Rodon had a comeback season. Luis Gil won the Rookie of the Year. Garrett Cole, he missed half the season, but when he pitched well. Once they realized, let's stop having Clay Holmes close games, their bullpen really snapped together. But you're going to look at this team; they have to stay healthy because there's a lot. If Stanton, who lest we forget was on fire in the postseason and played pretty well down the stretch, he's a history of not being healthy. Aaron Judge is at the wrong end of 30. Right now, if I'm a betting man, I would bet on New York, but that's mainly out of default. And if they have any injury issues with this team, I could easily see them being a mid to low 80 win team.
Yeah, and that's why the injury thing is interesting, because the Yankees do have problems with staying healthy. It just happens every year where they seem to lose big key players for huge portions of the season. Stanton being an example of one of those players who misses time every single year with some kind of injury. And then the thing with Aaron Judge that really intrigues me, that's always intrigued me, is how he just disappears in the playoffs. Because you look at the Yankees right now and it's like, okay, if they are healthy, they could win this division. But how far can they really go if you have Aaron Judge who's unable to produce in the playoffs, and they lost the guy who kind of fueled that offense for pretty much the whole season? Now it's like, okay, this is such a completely different player. It's so weird because Judge during the regular season is very good and the productivity is certainly there, but then you take him on the postseason stage and it's just a completely new player. And that to me is super odd. And that's another thing that I'm looking at with this Yankees team, is how much of a threat can they really be when it comes down to it at the end of the day, if he can't be consistent when it matters.
The other team, by the way, that I have to look at and say I have no idea what they are, is the 91 win Orioles, who lost their ace. There's we all know there's a ton of young talent on this team. Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, who was a potential MVP candidate, or at least, top 5. Jackson Holiday, who, he didn't make a huge splash coming out of the gate, but his talent is off the charts. And, they have some good young pitchers on their team, especially, Grayson Rodriguez, but you can't take Corbin, like all the top teams. One of them loses Juan Soto. The other loses Corbin Burns and Anthony Santander. Obviously they're filled with talent and they're filled with prospects to trade, but this is what I mean. Like, they're 91 wins. If you take a few, they could fall back to the mid 80s.
Yeah, you take a guy like Corbin Burns and you think about how much of a difference he really made on that Orioles team, because after 2 years ago when they got eliminated from the playoffs, I was like, they don't really have that number one starting pitcher. So they go out and get him, and then they pretty much have the same result in the postseason last year with
Yeah.
him. And it's almost like, is it because they're young and that's why they haven't been able to make this deep playoff run yet? Because you look at that roster and talent wise, to me, they're one of the most talented teams in the American League. I don't think there's anybody that can deny that if you look at the Orioles roster on paper right now, that they have the talent to be able to make a deep run. But I'm having trouble feeling like they're miles better than other teams in their division at this point, because they haven't really done a whole lot to add this offseason either to really put them in that type of conversation.
And Santander winds up going to Toronto.
Yep.
And Toronto was, but first of all, I've been screaming for them to change their manager for now 3 years. I mean, and they've been underachieving, and they have a legit superstar in Vladdy Guerrero Jr., who had a phenomenal year last year, and especially since they moved him off of third base and they put him in first where he belongs. Probably should be DH for that matter, but they've got talent on that team. They got young talent on that team, but they've not been able to put it together. They have some decent pitching. And if you're saying that, okay, if the Yankees could regress a little bit and the Orioles could regress a little bit, the Blue Jays, who had a rotten, I mean, they were 74 and 88 with all that talent they had on that team, that they were not a contender. And John Schneider's still cashing a paycheck. Does he have photos of Mark Shapiro? I mean, how is he still cashing a check as the manager?
He definitely has some sort of blackmail on the organization. That's the only thing I can think of and the only explanation I have, because eventually you have to change something up. And I feel like the Blue Jays are completely wasting the talent that they have right now. They have too much talent to not be a playoff contender every year with the makeup of players that they have right now. And they added Santander, which is a good piece for them to add. But I mean, you mentioned Vlad Jr. I mean, he's going to be a free agent next year.
Yeah.
Like, there's a risk that they don't have him after this upcoming season. So this whole core that they have now, they could be running out of time with this group. And it just blows my mind how every single year they're just not in contention like they should be, because on paper they 100% should be a contender with all that talent.
And of course, the team that always finds a way, they had a down year last year, but the team that always finds a way to sneak in is Tampa Bay. They've got a super smart front office. Kevin Cash, when he's not handling Blake Snell, is usually a really solid manager. They always take people who are either career AA players or someone you thought had retired 7 years ago and squeeze 80 solid innings out of them. I mean, they are the best bargain hunters you've ever seen. But you also have to throw in the factor that they're going to be playing in a minor league stadium this year. They tore the roof off the place, literally. And they can't, I mean, not that anyone is pining for the Trop, but they're going to be playing in a minor league stadium this year, outdoors in freaking Tampa, where I've been to Central Florida. It rains every day. It's really hot. And so I don't know how that's going to affect the team. It can't be good.
No, I think the Tampa Bay Rays, I've always felt for them in a way because the location of where they play has just never been great. I mean, St. Pete, that area where the Trop was just not great to begin with. And the ballpark itself, we all know, is not great. But now this transition is going to make a lot of things even tougher for them, even the factors out of their control. But not only that, but you also even look at their roster. And like you said, they do have a lot of no names on the roster consistently, but it's a bunch of no names that somehow can come together and win 90 games and sneak into the playoffs. And people are like, how do they do it? But I just think their developmental system and these young prospects that they get, that they develop, they're doing something right in that front office with developing young talent that always makes them a team I have to worry about in the division. The Red Sox struggle against them head to head every year. So there's definitely something about Tampa Bay, but every single year I look at their roster on paper and I say, there's no way this team can be taken seriously. And then they still find a way.
And of course, the amazing thing is that for generations, we've been saying the problem is the location in St. Pete. They support the Lightning, they support other teams, but they that stadium, which was built in the mid '80s to try to lure a team, is in the wrong place. So naturally, where's the proposal for the new stadium? Right next to it. It never made sense to me. Ever. Unbelievable. Well, look at we've talked about every other AL East team, but Gabby and I are going to be talking about the one team that could be taking advantage of a malleable American League East. Hey, are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. That's what they're called, wonderful pistachios. Wonderful pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk or getting ready to do the podcast and I just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, they got the in-shell option for you as well. It's a fantastic source of protein, giving you all 9 essential amino acids. No shell pistachio, wonderful pistachios, they have that grab and go ease. And whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, wonderful pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Say that 3 times fast. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Wonderful pistachio, it's in the name. We should have had some pistachios. I'm not gonna lie. All right, let's talk Red Sox. Let's talk Red Sox. You know, back when I got married in 2003, the Henry ownership was just getting started. And if you had told me then that this ownership would preside over 4 World Series titles in Boston and somehow be on the crap list of Red Sox fans, I would say you're out of your tree. But that's Boston fans for you. We wanted just 1 before we died, and now 4 is not enough. I have to address that because people hate us. But the Red Sox, since winning the World Series title in 2018, they've made the playoffs once where somehow I still don't understand, got to within 2 wins of the World Series in 2021. I don't know how they beat Tampa. I still don't. Bounced right off of Renfro. But and then they faced reality against Houston. But and that's been their only appearance in the postseason since. And since then, they traded away Mookie Betts for a Dodger dog and a VHS copy of Rambo 3, and then let Xander Bogaerts go. But you know, a small market team like Boston can't compete with a big market like San Diego, and we've always known that. It's been frustrating to see the Red Sox not act like a big market team when we know they can print money. And I haven't seen those prices go down since they traded Mookie Betts away. But this has been an interesting offseason for them, and one of the first ones in a long time that gives Red Sox fans any sense of, for the lack of a better word, optimism for the future. Gabby, tell me your thoughts of this offseason.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting because they were all talk. Even last offseason, they said they were going to have this big offseason. They were going to contend, and that didn't really happen. And then last year, they finished 500. They were a very average team. And they went into this offseason saying basically the same thing. We want to be a contender in 2025, and we want to win our division. Okay, so go out and make moves to help you win the division. So the thing that I really appreciate about Craig Breslow that he's done is that he hasn't been afraid to make a move for a guy like Garrett Crochet, like actually really pulling the trigger on that and saying, I'm not afraid to give up some good prospects to bring in a guy who can be the ace of our pitching staff for years to come, because I think that was the type of move that Chaim Bloom was a little afraid to do because he didn't want to give up prospects. So I really liked that Breslow was like, you know what, we have the talent pool in our farm system to do it. So let's bring this guy here. And I have no doubt in my mind that the Red Sox rotation is better than it was in 2024, which is exciting.
Absolutely.
They have
Sorry, keep going, keep going. You're on a roll. You're on a roll. I'm not going to stop you.
Okay. They have players now who can help them make a run. I mean, Walker Buehler, if he's healthy, could
Mhm.
be a very underrated move that a lot of people aren't talking about. I don't think, based on how he pitched in the playoffs, if he can carry that over into 2025, that could be huge for the Red Sox rotation. I mean, Tanner Houck still is there, had a good season in 2024. Bayo and Crawford are only hopefully going to continue to improve. And Lucas Giolito is ready to come back after missing the season from being injured. So this rotation is in a good spot right now. And the bullpen, they made some moves to improve the bullpen. My biggest thing, though, still is that they do have a couple glaring holes in this roster, and it still feels like it's incomplete going into opening day, particularly on the offensive side. A right-handed bat that they need. And I have said over and over again, this offense could really use a veteran in the lineup. I mean, you have Trevor Story, who knows if he's even going to be able to stay healthy. And
He
you
won't.
have,
He won't. Let me answer that for you.
yeah,
He won't.
I'm not holding out hope that he's going to be healthy. I mean, you have Devers, who is obviously the heart and soul of that offense, but then you have all these other young players who sure are talented, like guys like Duran, Casas,
Mhm.
Abreu, Rafaela. They all have talent that they can bring to the table, but I feel like bringing in a veteran right-handed bat could make a world of a difference for a young lineup, and they still seem hesitant to want to spend money on a player like Alex Bregman because they feel like they have the prospect pool that's going to come up and be their superstars, which, yes, I am excited about the talented prospects they have coming up, but you can't rely solely on that because the reality at the end of the day is that not every prospect pans out. That just is what
Right.
it is. And we're still waiting for them to show that they aren't really afraid to spend money. Yes, they offered Juan Soto a contract, but I think that was just a formality to try to shut the fans up and say, look, we can
Yeah.
spend money, knowing they wouldn't actually land Soto. But when it comes to their payroll, they still seem hesitant to want to make that big move. And talks right now are surrounding Nolan Arenado. Will they end up trading for him instead of landing Alex Bregman? I'm leaning towards yes. I think that's a more likely option
I
for the
think so
Red
too.
Sox right now. But it just still seems like this roster needs a couple more pieces. I would still like another high leverage reliever because I am concerned still about who's going to close games and
Right.
what that's going to look like because they might want Liam Hendricks to close, but he hasn't played in a while, so who knows what he's going to be. So I'm looking at those two areas and I'm a little concerned, and I'm also concerned about the catching situation. I mean, obviously they trust Connor Wong to be that number one catcher, but
Mhm.
now that Kyle Teal is no longer with the organization, the catching situation is looking a little dicey. So there's definitely a few areas that I'm still looking at and saying they need to add pieces. But you can look at the flip side of that and say the Red Sox have a shot because if their guys are healthy, they showed last year that they have talented pieces. And now that they've improved their pitching, I do think they can be a playoff team, but they still, to me, don't have enough to where they can get over that hump of confidently saying they are a World Series contending team.
Well, I mean, I think let me just say a couple things. First of all, as someone who's old enough to remember when they had Rice, Evans, Armas, and Baylor in the lineup at the same time to hear they need another right-handed bat. It's sort of like you would think that if you were a right-handed bat of any quality, you'd be falling over yourself to get to Fenway Park. And it's funny, like they're going to miss Tyler O'Neill. They're going to miss
Yeah.
that bat. I think that the thing that just sticking to the pitching, the thing that I love about the Crochet acquisition, it wasn't a signing, it was a trade. It didn't cost them any of their top prospects. We'll talk about the upcoming prospects in the final segment. It didn't cost them any of their top prospects. They got an all-star caliber pitcher who, again, has only 1 year of being that as a starter, but you put him in, it does take pressure off of Bello. It does take pressure off of Crawford. It does take pressure off of Houck. They can all kind of move down a step. And having a veteran like Buehler, again, I'm showing my age a little bit, but I remember like when you had like the Braves of the early 90s had a ton of whether Glavine and Smoltz, Maddox wasn't there yet, but Avery and Merker, they had all these really talented pitchers. And it seemed to click once they put Charlie Leibrandt, a veteran pitcher, into that staff that let everyone fall into place. Similar thing happened when the Kansas City Royals brought in James Shields, and Shields is having that one steady arm that you can count on, had everything lined into place. Buehler, as I live in Los Angeles, I've seen Buehler pitch. I know when Buehler is healthy, he's a legit all-star. When he pitches, he's not just the guy who got the final out of the World Series. When he's healthy, he's a very good pitcher. They're not asking him to be the ace. They're asking me the guy they can hand the ball to. Maybe some of that can rub off on some of the other pitchers, and it can go on from there. As for the bullpen, they're going to have to mix and match, and hopefully that Rubik's cube can find another Koji Uehara. Remember the 2013 season, which is my second favorite Red Sox team of all time. Uehara was like the third or fourth guy they used as a closer. And sometimes the person who winds up being the closer of a championship caliber team isn't necessarily the one you start the season with. Sometimes you find that little Jason Mott in the rough who was like, oh, look at he's pitching well. I saw that with Bochy all the time when he managed the Giants and he would manage the Rangers. He just would mix and match and like, okay, this is what works. And so, look at Kenley Jansen signed with I almost said the California Angels, really showing my age. But they're not in Los Angeles. Thank you, Kenley gave a couple of nice years. I don't trust him any further than I can throw him. And I think that it'll be somebody that we're not expecting. A Richard Fitz or a Garrett Whitlock are going to wind up with 28 saves for this team.
I like Justin Slayton. I think he deserves a shot to close games. He was arguably
the
best reliever last year. So I think he is somebody who they should consider the closing games, at least to start the season, because I think he's earned a shot and he's shown that he can pitch in high leverage, which is also super important.
Or how about this? And this is a radical idea. If you don't have a Uehara, you don't have a Keith Folk, you don't have a Papelbon, then you use whatever pitcher is best for that situation. Heaven forbid. You don't have to act like you have if you don't have a closer, then just bring in the best pitcher for that situation. If you wind up having 3 or 4 guys with 11, 12 saves, then okay. I don't think that, well, we dub you with the sword. You are the closer, and you must always pitch the ninth. You saw Bochy again, I keep going back to Bochy, but you saw Bochy would have a closer that he would go to normally, but he would use Santiago Castillo, or he would use Sergio Romo, or he would use Jeremy Afo. It wasn't always about compiling 50 saves. And I think that, Francona was also pretty good at that when he was with Cleveland, that he wouldn't always go to the closer, that he would, okay, I'm going to use whoever's the best. And if they don't have that guy, then, mix and match.
Yeah, I think that might be what their plan is as of right now, too. They're just going to kind of see who they have, how these guys look in spring, and then go from there and say, okay, maybe we try out Slayton in a 1-run game in the 9th inning and see how he pitches. And then maybe the next game we go to Whitlock and see how he performs in that situation, which, by the way, I'm very happy they are moving Whitlock back to the bullpen. I don't like him as a starter. I think he brings his best stuff out of the pen, and I think he should have stayed there the whole time. And hopefully he can stay healthy a little bit more now that they're keeping him in the bullpen.
When we come back, we're going to talk about the 3 names that hopefully will be Red Sox legends. Now, all Red Sox fans now are finding their inner John the Baptist, proclaiming the arrival. I hope I didn't offend anyone with that. I thought that was a pretty funny analogy. The arrival, prepare ye. That's right. I'm going to do a little God spell on you right now. The way of Roman Anthony, Christian Campbell, and Marcelo Meyer. By the way, Sasaki is now listed as the number 1 prospect. There has to be a different category. If you're coming over from an established league as opposed to coming up through the minor leagues. It's not a knock on Sasaki, but it's like when I saw, about 7-8 years ago, the top prospect in baseball is Shohei Ohtani. No, he's an established star who's playing in another league. It's a different animal to put someone in the category of a rookie. I think that should be a different category. But that being said, Anthony is considered to be one of the best young prospects in baseball. Campbell right behind him, Mayer right behind him. I think Red Sox fans are drooling at the idea of seeing how these guys can show up at Fenway, be really great, and then be messed over by the management who decide to nickel and dime them and trade for pennies on the dollars to the Dodgers. But what a 5 years it will be. This is like Red Sox fans are really sort of foaming at the mouth for this and seeing, can they really compete at this level and have the veterans like, Duran's now a veteran, or Devers, or probably it'll be Arenado, to be surrounding the Anthonys, the Campbells, and the Mayers moving forward.
Well, yeah, that's definitely the idea here, because you look back at the Red Sox most recent championship team, 2018, they had their homegrown stars on that team, but they also combined them with some proven veteran talent around them to help them win that championship. And the ideal roster would have a mix of both. And the Red Sox right now definitely lack that proven veteran aspect of it. But these guys are definitely talented, and I'm very excited for the future of this Red Sox team with these guys. They do have to figure out the outfield situation once Anthony does come up, because I thought that it would have made sense for them to trade Wilyer Abreu when his value was as high as it was, because you're keeping Rafaela because they already extended him. Duran is too versatile to me to let go of. I just think he has too many things that he brings to the table. So then when Anthony does come up, then what do you do? And in that case, they might have to look at some more roster reshuffling. But then you have Campbell, who is looking more and more likely like he could have a shot to be on the opening day roster, because right now the second base position is not clear cut, because it's really down to him and Vaughn Grissom as of right now, based on where the roster stands. So Grissom hasn't played a lot. We don't really know what he is really, because he's been injured for a lot of his time in Boston. So nobody can really say confidently that he's the second baseman either. So this is a really good opportunity for Campbell to have a really good spring and potentially land a spot on the opening day roster, which would be very exciting. I think people are super excited about him. And the fact that he can also play in the outfield as well definitely works to his advantage also. He can be more of that utility, versatile type of guy and can play where the Red Sox need him to play. So I'm definitely very excited for this group of guys. I think with Marcelo, for him, when it comes down to now is, can he stay healthy? Because he has had some injury issues. He hasn't gotten to take an at-bat yet in AAA, so we have to wait and see. He's definitely going to need more time than the other ones in AAA, I would imagine. But if you have a middle infield that you can potentially feel that excited about in Marcelo Meyer and Campbell to be your two middle infielders of the future, to pair with Devers and Casas on the corners, most likely, because who knows what's going to happen with Devers if they do get Arenado and he shifts. But if that doesn't happen and those are your two guys on the corners, that's a pretty good infield right there. And you have to be excited about that, because these guys definitely come with a lot of hype for good reason. I mean, Campbell has just motored his way through the Red Sox system. Every level he's been at, he's made that transition seamlessly. So I'm definitely interested in seeing the adjustment period for these guys when they do get to the majors. But I have a feeling we're going to see some serious talent out of these players when they come up.
And the idea that they're coming up in a year where there is uncertainty in the American League East. So the idea, remember last year, the Red Sox had an up and down year and they finished dead even at 81.
Yeah.
If they can improve from last year, and if the Yankees and Orioles might regress, and the Rays are playing in a minor league stadium, and the Blue Jays, who knows what the hell they're doing, I do think the Red Sox are a legit wild card contender, provided that some of the players can stay healthy, provided that one of their stars blossoms. I'm not greedy enough to expect all three to blossom at once, but one of them blossoms and sparks the team, and someone emerges from that magic eye drawing that is called their bullpen. And I think that I don't think 85, 86 wins is out of the question. And the way the American League is right now, have fun in October. And if you're in Boston, don't schedule your wedding until November.
Yeah, exactly. Take note of that. But again, for me, it was when the Red Sox were not in the postseason. So I got lucky there. But yes, you are right. The division and even the American League in general right now all feels wide open to me. And the Red Sox are definitely not in a place right now where I can sit here and say they're going to finish last in their division. They're going to win 78 games, because that was one of the projections was that I saw was them winning 77 or 78 games and finishing in last place in their division. But they are objectively a better team than they were in 2024, assuming they
Yes.
are healthy. And that
Yeah.
to me makes me feel optimistic. And you can get a wild card spot with 86 wins
Oh, yeah.
now at this point. Do I think they are a World Series contending team? Not right now, no. But if they can make the playoffs with a lot of their roster being young talent, that's definitely promising for years to come for the Red Sox. And then you continue to build around those guys. But at some point, John Henry is going to have to not be afraid to start spending some money, because that still is where the fans are getting frustrated, is the fact that he still seems hesitant about doing that. And at some point, that mindset's going to have to change. And if they make the playoffs this year with these guys, you're going to have to spend money on a veteran to put with them for 2026. It's only the fair thing to do. So I'm hoping that, he starts to change his tune a little bit with that. But there's definitely a lot of talent in Boston right now. And I do think they're being discredited a little bit and counted out a little bit prematurely, because if these guys are healthy, I think the Red Sox will surprise some people.
Well, you never surprise me, Gabby, which is why I love having you on the show, whatever the heck your last name is. So tell people where they can follow you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Gabby Maljanian, or my show on Twitter at LO_Red Sox. We're a nice little Red Sox community there, so you can see what shows are coming up and interact with other Red Sox fans too, which we love to do. You can also follow me on Instagram at Gabby_Maljanian10 and all of that shabazz. Also, be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube or any other podcast platform.
And you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever they're calling it these days. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, or just leave comments right here on YouTube. Talking about a malleable, that's the key word of the day, a malleable American League East. And could a young, hungry Red Sox team sneak on in? This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Red Sox crossover. That's Gabby Maljanian. Don't call her Hurlbut. I'm your pal Sully.